Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Unless you've been living under a rock like Patrick Starr for the past, good grief, 20 years now, you'll most likely know that the answer is the one and only SpongeBob SquarePants. Yep, I'm going to overanalyze this awesome children's cartoon and its cast of wacky sea creatures. I'm going to treat it much more seriously than it probably should be treated, but hey, I've got nothing better to do, so I hope you enjoy.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
No, Patrick, mayonnaise is not an instrument. Horseradish is not an instrument either.
I feel like there's a general consensus among members of the SpongeBob SquarePants fandom that band Geeks is one of the greatest episodes in the history of the show. It came out in 2001 and was in Season 2. Now, as you've probably heard, us fans generally consider the golden age of SpongeBob to be the first 3 seasons, which were the ones that were on television before the first movie came out. Thus, this episode is right in the middle of a plethora of classics. With so many great episodes around this time, why is Band Geeks so consistently singled out as the best? Well, buckle up, because we'll have to get through a lot in order to find the answer. First of all, in case anyone doesn't know this episode, or they need to refresh their memories, I'll present a brief summary. So, Squidward is informed by his arch-rival, Squilliam, that he has the opportunity to play in the Bubble Bowl. Yeah, basically the Super Bowl. Shh! Squidward pretends that he has a band so he can disprove Squilliam's taunts and at least seem as successful as him. He then recruits just about everyone in Bikini Bottom as part of his band. Rehearsals go horribly wrong, culminating in a gigantic fight the night before the performance, and Squidward leaves disheartened and convinced that he'll lose as usual. However, the band rallies together, and after practicing through the night, they surprise Squidward and Squilliam with a brilliant and polished song at the Bubble Bowl. So yeah, there you go, that's Band Geeks in like a couple seconds. Now, SpongeBob has been an immense success not just with children, but with adults as well. There is an entire generation who grew up with episodes of SpongeBob primarily from the first 3 seasons, and many of them are either close to adulthood or are adults already. And unlike several other children's cartoons, they still unashamedly love watching it. Sure, there are many cartoons that remind adults of their childhood, but I feel like people feel more than simple nostalgia for SpongeBob. Sure, nostalgia does play a big part in their love of it, but that's not all. For one thing, there's actually some really funny stuff in the show. Now obviously it's not the only funny cartoon in the world, but the balance between kid-friendly humor and jokes that older people will appreciate more is pulled off brilliantly, as I've said before, particularly in those first 3 seasons.
If that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights? Nosferatu!
Yeah, I'm kinda guessing that most children don't know about the 1922 German expressionist film that this is a reference to. Anyway, as another example, we'll look at the Season 2 episode Sailor Mouth, which is based entirely on SpongeBob and Patrick learning sentence enhancers.
Hey, Patrick, how the are ya?
Pretty good, SpongeBob.
Or curse words to you and me. Now, cursing is obviously not generally considered appropriate for the young children who would have seen this episode when it premiered. Sure, all of the words are censored out with various marine sound effects, but it still essentially teaches children about the concept of swearing. This episode mixes humor that really isn't all that appropriate for children with the usual fun and innocence of SpongeBob and Patrick, creating that perfect balance that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, this episode is good. Clever humor isn't the only aspect of SpongeBob that has made it so enduring. Of course, it's not the only cartoon with memorable characters. but most of the characters are actually kinda relatable in many ways, which is a bit more unique for a children's cartoon. The characters have flaws which, while sometimes played for laughs, are able to get the audience to empathize with them no matter what age they are. Patrick is unintelligent, Sandy is overly competitive, Mr. Krabs is way too greedy, and heck, even Larry the Lobster is way too vain. However, they all have their redeemable qualities as well. These characters truly care about each other. These are much more three-dimensional characters than those of, say, Looney Tunes, for example. Heck, even Plankton, while unquestionably evil, ultimately just wants to be successful and popular like Mr. Krabs. As ridiculous as this sounds, these characters are oddly nuanced and therefore kind of realistic. But I know what you're thinking. What about SpongeBob and Squidward? You haven't mentioned them. Well, there's a reason that I've saved them for last. Those two are one of the main reasons why Band Geeks is so successful. It's been said by far smarter people than me that while the average viewer identifies with the character of SpongeBob when they are younger, they begin to identify with Squidward more and more as they age, and this makes a lot of sense. SpongeBob is naive, curious, and easily excited, just like most young children. In fact, when my brother and I were talking about the show recently, he said that he used to view SpongeBob as the straight man in the show. He saw SpongeBob as the normal one, probably because he, like most other children, was the most like SpongeBob at the time. Now obviously, SpongeBob isn't really the straight man at all. From my viewpoint at least, that role would belong to Squidward, but maybe that's just because I find him more relatable now. Squidward usually can't stand the wackiness of the rest of the main cast. Though he himself is not without his eccentricities, such as his devotion to the arts, they are stereotypically the sort of thing that a sophisticated and mature adult would be interested in. Unlike the rest of the cast, possibly with the exception of Plankton, he really isn't satisfied with most of his life. Plankton is portrayed as evil and cruel though. Squidward is often shown to be mean, but he's still a good person deep down. Though he's not above manipulating those around him, such as when he sets SpongeBob and Patrick against each other in Naughty Nautical Neighbors, Squidward wouldn't try to take control of SpongeBob's brain or steal the secrets to Mr. Krabs' success. Occasionally, he's even shown to appreciate everyone deep down. He outright confesses to this during Fools in April. The greatest example of this, however, is surely in Dying for Pie. As he believes that SpongeBob will die, he wants to give him the greatest last day he could possibly have. Squidward agrees to literally do anything SpongeBob's ever wanted to do with him. He's clearly not a completely bad person. He's unlikable because he's bitter and sad about being in a pretty awful situation, and people can relate to this. He's cynical and sarcastic because he believes he deserves better. At one point or another, almost everyone feels like this to some extent. As we grow older, we all feel unhappy about some aspect of our situation, and many of us definitely would like to have a moment in the spotlight, just like Squidward. Which finally brings us back to Band Geeks. Think about it. Most lists of best SpongeBob episodes are probably made by slightly older folk, those who aren't young children anymore. I've seen people say that this is the best episode because it's the one where Squidward wins, but I don't think it's quite that simple. Why is the episode where Squidward wins the best one in the eyes of so many people? Well, I agree with the many who say it's because, as I mentioned earlier, most people see themselves in Squidward. We recognize that he isn't perfect, but we empathize with his situation. We all want to feel important, to be appreciated. And that's what Band Geeks shows us. It's not just that Squidward wins, but it's because of the nature of the whole event. This is far from the only episode where things work out for Squidward. For example, he beats Squilliam in House Fancy from Season 6. However, in Band Geeks, he wins out over Squilliam because the members of the town actually care enough about him to put aside their differences and give him the victory he's always wanted. Look at SpongeBob's iconic speech from the episode.
So if we all could just pretend that Squidward was a fireman or some guy in an ambulance, then I'm sure we could all pull together and discover what it truly means to be in a marching band.
Obviously that's an intentionally comedic scene, but it shows that the members of the town love Squidward unconditionally. He hasn't really done all that much for them, but they are still willing to work hard enough to make him happy. Yes, people love this episode because Squidward wins, but they also love it because of why he succeeds. He succeeds because all these people back him up. They're his friends. Squidward shares the success with his friends. He has the success because of his friends, and thus is finally able to feel appreciated by them. And when it comes down to it, we all want to feel appreciated. In a nutshell, everyone loves this episode because they see themselves in Squidward. That's a big part of why we want to see him succeed. They can relate to him wanting his moment in the spotlight, so they love when he finally gets it, largely because the reason he gets it is that his friends care enough about him to help him get there. Essentially, this episode shows that Squidward is loved and Squidward is cared about by his friends. We all want to be loved and cared about, so we gravitate towards the episode where the audience surrogate is shown to be. It's so satisfying to see Squidward getting the sweet victory that he's always wanted because, in a way, we see ourselves getting said victory, with the help of our friends and loved ones, of course. This is technically mostly speculation, and of course is partially opinion-based, but I hope you found what I've had to say interesting at the very least, even if you disagree with aspects of it. Band Geeks is truly one of the greatest episodes of the series, even though it's probably not my all-time favorite. What is my favorite, you ask? Well, I might tell you about it one day, but I'm just about out of time right now, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later. Yeah, how's that for a strategy to force you to subscribe? Mwahahaha! Oh yeah, and while I'm shamelessly plugging my channel, I urge you to check out our own animated cartoon, The Chef Clownman Show. If you enjoyed this video, it's heavily inspired by SpongeBob, so you should probably give it a shot. Enough said.
Don't ever look back on the world closing in. Be on the attack with your wings on the wind. All the things will begin. And it's sweet, sweet, sweet victory. And it's ours for the taking. It's ours for the fight.